Hi, this is Julie. Two podcasts with Kristin Ward, who is the CEO of the newly formed Austera Group. She's a former co-CEO of Age Well and Solvere Living. She has 30 years experience in the business. She started as a skilled nursing operator, and she has worked on both the operator side as well as the consultant side, forming three companies now. She has insights galore. I loved picking her brain so much that we made it into 2 episodes, could do probably 10 more. She thoughtfully shared her top 3 operational fixes, the things that she sees can kind of over and over again as far as operational challenges as she visits hundreds and hundreds of communities from an objective standpoint, new eyes on, if you will, a business and what owner operators could look at to really make a difference in this very competitive market. Hope you enjoy.
We'd like to thank Advantage Anywhere for sponsoring this episode of the Grow Your Occupancy podcast. At Advantage Anywhere, we understand senior living communities. Our customizable CRM and automation system is designed to help you convert more leads into move-ins faster, easier, and with less manual effort. With personalized follow-up automations, your team can focus on what matters most, spending time with prospects to get more move-ins. Visit www.advantageanywhere.com to see how we can help you get more move-ins with less stress.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Grow Your Occupancy podcast. I'm Julie Podewitz, CEO and founder, and I am here with Kristin Ward, who is the CEO of Austera Group. Welcome back, Kristin.
Thank you.
This is part 2 of a 2-part episode with Kristin Ward. We could have 10 parts. I have, speaking of fangirling, we were talking about the Olympics on the last one, but I've definitely fangirled the Kristin Ward bandwagon for many, many years. Kristin, we were talking about operational fixes, and I asked you for your top 3. The first one you mentioned was workforce development. Can you kind of tie that one up for us?
Sure. And we started talking about it in the last session, but just to continue that with 2 examples. One, back in 96, Beverly Enterprises gave us tools to help us. We created some recognition and rewards programs. I mean, back then it was all physical. There were no digital ones, the boom boxes that people could win. But then we had some internal meetings with the team to ask them what else would motivate them. And a lot of them wanted growth opportunities. And we created a mentor program, a lead CNA program, a lead housekeeping program, a lead dietary program, right? A dietary lead. So we created growth opportunities. Well, fast forward, to the last few years, there's a community that I always use as a shining example of the importance of workforce development across the business. And we know this logically. Everyone will nod their heads and say, well, of course, we know this. But to see it play out time and time again is pretty fascinating. This community is an older community, over 25 years old, in a very affluent area in Texas. It was an acquisition by an owner group. There was a renovation, but a renovation cannot change the size of the apartments, right? With a lot of new product coming in. So all studios and 1 bedrooms. So it's not the best, shiniest product in the market by any means. There are challenges there. But this community for 3 years running has been between 97 and 100% occupied.
Wow.
Consistently for the last 3 years and ongoing. And guess what else they have? They also have consistently 3 years going the highest team member satisfaction scores on their annual Great Place to Work survey. They also have the highest resident satisfaction.
Yes, wow, resident
for
satisfaction.
3 years and running. I mean, by a lot, right? And also they have the lowest turnover
No shock
in that organization.
I bet you
They've
they
got
have
team members.
you're talking about turnover and staff, but also I'm sure
Yeah.
resident length of stay.
Yes. Yes, length of stay. It doesn't just attract a higher acuity resident, which sometimes assisted living with studios and one bedrooms tends to
Sure.
draw, right? Because you
Sure.
don't have the big shiny 2 bedrooms.
Sure.
But because of the feeling in this community consistently over and over, which is driven by that leader who
Yeah.
truly believes in workforce development and
Mhm.
respect, she's created this environment, and it, I mean, outperforms everything in the
It's-
company and in that market.
That is people, because again, it's emotion, right? People want, emotion drives every decision, and that's where you move and where you continue to live. And not only has she creating it's that first step, it's sustaining, so teaching others and coaching and reinforcing and building that culture. Kudos. That is it's people. You have to have your process, obviously, but your product, like you said, I'm sure it's clean like you said, it's renovated, but maybe a long hallway, the
Right.
small apartments with no walk-in closets, right? Which could be an excuse and is an excuse for a lot of people. We have a client right now who has restrooms, or excuse me, they have a restroom in the apartment, but the showers are, and they are very highly occupied. Their reputation is next to none in there, and that's showering down the hallway, right? Which could be a great excuse for being,
Yes.
widely, unoccupied. So that's number one. What's number two, as far as maybe some, again, an operational fix that makes huge impact?
I'd say too, across the years and across the board, it's the lack of a strategic and comprehensive business plan for the community, for the
Okay.
community itself. And that ties in key differentiators. If you don't really know who you are, what you're trying to be. So in your example that you just gave, right? It's very easy to get caught up in the weakness of we don't have showers in the apartments, and therefore we will never attract this kind of customer. Instead of, what do we do really well, and how do we truly differentiate ourselves? And are there programs we can create around this? Do we expand a certain type of service, right? A full business plan to support the positioning, right? So you can identify who you want to be, but does that make sense? Does everything tie together? And then how do you execute on that? What are all the components? Because every single department has to have a piece of that. So it's a business plan is not something you hear very often in our business,
No,
which is
no.
interesting. You hear marketing plan, you hear an outreach plan, you hear, goals. There's some organizations that do a good job of goal setting, others that sort of do, but then they don't have the tactics to support the goal.
Right, the tactics, yes.
So a true comprehensive business plan, I find, is almost always lacking, especially in an organization that's not successful, or community that's not successful. But even in those that just can't quite reach the pinnacle of where they want to be, they may have 60% of it. They don't have maybe all the detail that they need
Yeah.
to truly differentiate themselves in a market that has a lot of newer stuff that in some markets we know there are price wars going on to fill fast. How do you stay true or identify who you truly are?
Yeah, and it's if you don't know it, no one knows it, right? So if you
Exactly.
don't know your differentiator and how you execute on that, say, oh, well, we give great care. Well, so down the street will say the same thing, or we're really friendly. What do you do? What's done? What's done to support? And this is a business. This meaning period, but running a community. So running a community, that's running a multi-million-dollar business. And
It
that's
is.
huge. And so and I mean, personally, a business plan, business plan period. I can't say that I've seen many, and like you said, and even a marketing plan, which oftentimes isn't a marketing plan. It's more of maybe a log of things that have
Yeah.
happened, right? And yeah, the time that it would take on the front end to put a comprehensive business plan together is going to pay off in the long run.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
you said like each department needs to have its own sub plan, its own plan, right? As part of this business plan.
Absolutely. They each need to have a goal associated with that business plan and then their tactics to achieve that goal, right? Within each department. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
you're not going, everything's so interconnected, which is why, I kept jumping back and forth between operations and sales and marketing because I'd get so frustrated with silos. Silos don't work, and you can't have wellness or nursing and sales and marketing in silos. You can't have your food and beverage and your operations admin in silos, right? It's also interconnected. And so everybody has to be part of one strategic and comprehensive business plan.
yeah. And in order to do that, though, you really need to own your own piece of that. It's like the flywheel, right?
Yeah.
So you're the Ferris wheel, flywheel, and we're all in our bucket of our expertise.
Yes.
But the center of that, right? We're all coming to the table or getting on the Ferris wheel for the common goal of getting this going and keeping it rolling because we're coming at it from different expertises for the purpose of. And there's the business plan there, right?
And that helps break down that barrier. Sometimes
Yeah,
there's that barrier between sales and marketing and everybody else,
right,
right?
right.
Because nobody has a job unless there are residents living there.
Exactly, exactly. And it's a wheel, it's not a one here and like I'm the first one to say, and then, we'll have said it so many times, is everybody's in sales. Well, that's the truth. Everyone is, because if you talk to another human being, you're in sales of some type. But that's part of that of the flywheel of got to drive revenue. So you can make business cards and start a business
Yes.
and put a stake in the ground. But if you don't have customers, that it's really just business cards and a name, right? So you've got your workforce development. These are big projects, right? And a comprehensive business plan.
Yes.
You're really on your way. What's a third one, Kristin?
A third one, and I went back and forth on this third one because again, depending on the years, but I would say consistently deferred maintenance. And here's what I mean by that too. It's not just deferred maintenance, it's also first impressions. Let's tie those together because
Okay.
sometimes it doesn't need a refurbishment. You don't need new flooring. You don't need new furniture. Sometimes you do. You absolutely do, but a lot of times you don't. But you need to be clean. You need to be uncluttered. And again, it's 101. We know this, but time and time and time and time again, to varying degrees, when I'm doing assessments or going into transition a community, from one to another, an acquisition of a community that was failing, there is always a high degree, different level of complexity, but high degree of either deferred maintenance, things that have not been addressed, or lack of a cohesive plan on how to address CapEx projects, meaning let's do this one, let's do this one, let's do this one. And then you look at it and you spend all this money and it's a hodgepodge, right? It looks worse than if maybe you hadn't done it because there's not a 2 or 3 year plan. It's project by project by project. So just like you look at a cohesive business plan, you need a cohesive CapEx plan. And some organizations do a good job. They may get a property condition assessment, bring in a professional, they may plan those things out. But that's usually from a budgeting standpoint, and it's not tying back to who are you, your
Right.
positioning, right? And before you undertake a project, again, what's your position in the market? Are you high end? Who is your customer? Are you changing your use or expanding your services? And then does your CapEx plan support that? Because oftentimes those are looked at independently instead of together. It all has to tie together. It's fascinating to me. I remember one of my very first assessments I did back with Solutions Advisors in 09 or 10. And this community is beautiful luxury community in a high-end market in the Northeast. And the first thing I like to do when I go into a community is use the restroom that everyone will use. Where is your first public restroom closest to the front? And I always start there. More important to me even than the discovery room or hospitality room, whatever you call it. I mean, I want to see that bathroom.
Yes.
So I walk in and I ask if I may use the restroom, and they say, you've got to wait until the concierge comes back. It's locked. The key is locked away. The key
Right.
is locked away. Then she has to, this is in a luxury assisted living and independent living community. Okay.
Wow.
And literally the key comes out with the
With a
bathroom
big,
wooden, and I thought it was a joke, but it wasn't. And truly the resistance to just getting rid of that was unbelievable. That's a very dramatic example. It's a true one. I can't make it up. But there's example after example after example of people getting in their own way and not taking a step back and looking at what is that customer's impression when they walk in, whether it's cleanliness, it's deferred maintenance, all the light bulbs are different colors, it's dark and dingy. You know, it's truly
Sure.
looking at things and then determining as part of that business plan, what do we need to do and how do we maintain what we have or enhance what we have?
right. And also once you get into that restroom, how many times has the waste can, even if it's not filthy, which that's been the case, certainly, the waste can is overflowing. It's not clean. It's not filthy. It's not clean. And that's, I 100% do, without huge dollars, I mean, do the basics, right? And that sounds, again, so logical. And yes, things can get dirty very quickly. In our own home, they get in my house and like accelerates and all that, right? But that's why it's such critical to have that. It's got to be clean and it's got to smell good, and people will forgive a little, like you said, furniture maybe, but not the cleanliness component.
And people get blinders on. I've gone to communities where I'm walking through the front door and I start asking all these questions about the trash can in the parking lot that's turned over and the dead plants over to the side. And, I'm asking these questions. They say, well, we all come in the back. Like, great, but somebody needs to come in the front, so it's have a plan. It's all part of this business plan, right? You can create a simple first impressions checklist. You can have every department head take a turn once a week because they're going to look at it differently. Come and park in the front one day in the week that you're going to do the first impression checklist. But you can accomplish it any way you want, but it's thinking about it, making a deliberate effort, and then doing it. And even when you're looking at your CapEx projects, it's not, well, let's just redo the memory care. And then owners come back and say, well, you've got X dollars in the budget. And then you say, well, I can't do it for that. And then people don't know what to do. Or bring in an expert, again, a consultant, and just say, if this is our dollar amount, what should we do to get the biggest bang for our buck?
Right.
How do we make the biggest impact with the lowest amount of dollars? Sometimes you don't need to redo all the lighting. Sometimes you change the color of the ceiling, as simple as that sounds. But sometimes people can see it, but the ones when it's left to the communities, a lot of times they're in it every day and they just don't have the objectivity to step back and look at it with different eyes.
So this will be 3.5. So let's assume cleanliness. So cleanliness certainly takes some dollars with capital, somebody to actually do it. But let's assume that's the case. What's the one thing that without doing construction, what's your advice on maintenance? Deferred, like
on deferred maintenance. I mean, little things like, and they're not little, they have such a big impact. Light bulbs. Communities I go into, as silly as that sounds, but it's like, yes, well, we've started changing out to the LEDs. You've got what a lot of communities do is when they change the light bulbs and they burn out, they go to the LEDs that are bright white and the others that are there incandescent soft white. And you've got yellow and you've got white. Just crazy.
All the lighting symmetrical, the same. So if you're going to start
or at least in one section of the building, at least think about it strategically. If you don't have the money to do the whole building, do a hallway at a time. do a
Got it.
floor at a time. It's being strategic about some of those things instead of just changing out the dining room chairs and the carpet the next year. If it's going to look worse for that year, what's a different way to approach it?
And this is a bonus question that may not be relevant to anything, but dining room. Tablecloths or no?
Everyone has a different opinion on this, and honestly, there's no right or wrong. Linen contracts are really expensive and they're impossible to get out of, and you're stuck with them for 5 years. And very few communities have the ability to do their linens in-house. Very few, right? I mean, in the old days, in the big nursing homes, we had the big commercial washers and dryers. We had the presses. I mean,
Yeah.
don't see that anymore, right? So then you've got a linen contract. Personally, I like, now your tables have to look good. So
Yes.
if you've got good looking tables, you can get great looking placemats that are washable. You can make it look very elegant with the right attention to detail, the right kind of tables, et cetera. It can save you money in the long run. Some communities need linens, or some communities may have a section of the dining room that they want to use linens on. So it gives it a different flavor. It gives it a different feel. They can keep the bad tables over there that don't look as good. You know, there are different ways, again, to be strategic. It's just giving it thought. It's giving it thought. And with how busy everybody is just running the business, this business has gotten increasingly more difficult every year for a multitude of reasons. Regulations are harder than they've ever been. Recruiting is harder than it's ever been. Owners want to get back to pre-COVID NOI, and we understand that. But the job load on the executive director has increased exponentially in the last 5 years. I mean, it's incredible. I have the utmost respect for executive directors and all department heads in these communities now, because when you go back 5 years and even 10 years, especially, it's a completely different job.
It is. And with the budget, here's my thought, is that it's two jobs, to hire the person that runs the business, the executive director, and the person that runs the people side of it. So from hospitality all the way, hospitality being your team members, your employees,
Your first impressions, your sales and marketing.
It's two jobs, and we need a business, multi-million-dollar, business. You have to have an MBA, but just a real business-minded with the business plan, and then the ED, co-ED, or whatever the word is on the other side. Yes, it's an investment, but like you said, taking a look at what might that do too. Turn, the retention and resident satisfaction and your ratings and your differentiators and your customer experience. Would that because I just brought it up a couple times. This is just a couple operators immediately was shut down. No way, we don't have a budget. And I understand, because like you said, I mean, margins are squeezed and we've got to continue to drive rate as much as we can in a competitive market. But I just think, is it a thought? Is it at least worth some thought, and maybe some pencil to the sharpening of the pencil, or whatever they say.
Right. If you're not working on the business as a whole, and a lot of these, just like a lot of marketing directors, I mean, these are salespeople in senior housing. That's great, but they've not been trained in how to create a strategic marketing plan necessarily.
Right.
If they're given the tools and the template and the training, then a lot of them can take that and learn it. They don't need to be beholden to it forever. Same with a business plan. I mean, it's something you learn over the years, but to give somebody a jump start and a head start, and then to be able to give them the tools to manage from that, right? It's not someone that you have to hire forever to do it for them. It's someone to teach them the importance, the strategy, and give them the tools to continue to then do it themselves.
Yeah. Or hire that, like you said, short-term business ED, if you will, for that interim time, and then get going. And that's your area of expertise. Among many. Kristin Ward, thanks for taking time out of your day to talk with us on the Grow Your Occupancy podcast. I really appreciate it. And again, if someone wants to reach you, the best way to do it is...
Yes, through our website at austeragroup.com or Kristin at austeragroup.com. IN.
Kristen with an I, Kristen with an IN, two I's. Thank you again, Kristen. If you'd like to learn more about Grow Your Occupancy, you can find us on our website, growyouropcupancy.com. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, subscribe, and if you give us a rating, that helps other people find us and get phenomenal advice and tips from people like Kristen. Thank you again for listening to the Grow Your Occupancy podcast.
We'd like to thank Advantage Anywhere for sponsoring this episode of the Grow Your Occupancy podcast. At Advantage Anywhere, we understand senior living communities. Our customizable CRM and automation system is designed to help you convert more leads into move-ins faster, easier, and with less manual effort. With personalized follow-up automations, your team can focus on what matters most, spending time with prospects to get more move-ins. Visit www.advantageanywhere.com to see how we can help you get more move-ins with less stress.